Ali wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So as we say, we want to, always have some lessons in black history. Black history. Our history is important. No. Our history is the people. Because we don't know. We don't know our history. We don't know the good part of our history before our ancestors were brought here to America. We don't know, the good part of our history, and a lot of us don't know that, many of our ancestors were Muslim before they were snatched out of Africa and brought here. They were Muslim. Many of our great leaders and scholars, like Abdul-Hakim Quick, number one, because he studies this issue, and many of them have given lectures, and Dr. Suleiman Yang, who passed away, these are, African historians and African American historians who know the history, and they can tell you, alhamdulillah, they give you percentages, anywhere from 20 to 30% of the African slaves that were brought out of Africa were Muslim. You see? And some of our ancestors were imams and scholars and leaders. Some of them were kings, and he had status. So we need to know that. Absolutely. Okay? And so there's a reason why we see all the things going on today in the society. With the social upheaval, the racial injustices. Yeah. Where did that come from? Why does one person feel, he's better than another based on his color? Why do one feel they have a right to oppress and take advantage of another, you see? And so we don't even know the magnitude of what they did to us. But we don't read. We don't care. Give me a joint. Give me a beer. Give me a bottle of whatever. Let me space out. Let the world. That's how people are. These people in general. But we Muslims, we ain't supposed to be like that. Allah said, Ikra, read. The Prophet told us to study and to learn the religion and whatnot. To know what's going on around you. Knowing something about yourself and something about your history puts things in perspective. So there's a lot of good reasons, of course, for having a sense of history. And now more so than ever. More so than ever. And I've been a Muslim over 5 decades. And I'm telling you, as an elder now, we got to go back. We got to start looking. Man. And when you start looking, you'll start seeing things and say, wow, man, what? SubhanAllah. It give you cause to want to do better. What they say? Or that's reverse racism. But Malcolm, he said, every time we do that, you start talking about what they did, what they did to you. When you remind them what they did to you, so perhaps they may have a heart and they say, wow, we were wrong. They won't say that. They say, don't say it. And perhaps for hundreds of years, we ain't been saying it strong enough. We ain't been saying it enough to people to say, we apologize. We were wrong. For the government to say, we were wrong. How can we heal? How can we heal this people? They never came like that in my lifetime. And based upon what I've read, nobody. There have been some here, some there. You see? They won't tell you what they did to you. They won't tell you. So, thank Allah for some scholars and intellectuals from the black community. And other than that, people who love truth. And they say, hey, don't worry, we can hear. We got to bring this stuff out. Bring it out. So that's being done. But if you don't read it, you won't know. Because CNN and all, they ain't going to tell you. They ain't going to tell you. I don't know. So, I have to tell you. See, I have to tell you. I feel compelled to tell you you know. And I know I'm going off a little bit on a tangent, but y'all gotta forgive me, man. This stuff is important, and all the people that's listening to this lecture will go out too. You know, this information, we don't read. You know, and I find that I'm going back in, thinking of things that I missed. I've been a student of black history. I'm not an expert, but things I missed. Man, I missed that. And so I know what the people don't miss. What the people miss. We don't know the seerah of the prophet. Same thing. We don't know the life of the Nabi, the messenger of Allah. We don't know. And that's why we be so confused as to how to practice Islam today. But anyway, let me just mention a few highlights that I outlined for you. And each week, I'm going to be into this here. This is going to be an addendum to my class on the prophets. We're talking about a little history, our history, and especially for our young people to know. Perhaps you'll be inspired to do a little follow-up and read. Okay? And highlights of black history. Slavery, or what they call the Atlantic slave trade. That's what it was called. Was based on racism and big business. That's what I see. You know, the Atlantic slave trade that took place between 1619 up until 1865, when they supposed to had outlawed slavery. No more slavery in America. That was the run. See? That was the period. 246 years of pain and suffering and killing and murdering and raping our people from Africa. It was based on racism and big business. Underscore that. Racism that still exists today and big business, the racism's still here. And so even though physically the slavery thing is not there, but the trauma of it, you live it every day and don't even recognize it. The way you act and the way you do things, you don't have a clue why you act like that. You were made to act like that. That's how you were traumatized. That's how it impacted you. Okay? So I want to underscore this point, that slavery, the Atlantic slave trade, based on racism and big business, man. A lot of money. People were greedy. They made a lot of money. The foundation of the wealth of this nation is on the backs of our ancestors, man. Free labor for 246 years. They didn't get paid. These people got wealthy. And their children and their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, they inherited all that wealth you see, all that wealth, and the rich and the famous, all of that you see. How long? That's how they got it. Slavery was the backbone of the economy of this nation, man. And there's proof of that. And these people won't say, when you start talking about it, they want to accuse you of being a racist. They look at your condition in the hood and say, why do people live like that? We act like that there. Hey, man, we only inherited what you did to us. Okay? So the Atlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage is sometimes called, or the transatlantic slave trade. These are some of the names you hear, all right? From 1619 to 1865, 246 years. Plus another 100 years after slavery became illegal, became part of the Constitution, the 13th Amendment, abolished slavery, you know what I'm saying? And then from that time to 1965, the Jim Crow laws of discrimination, blacks and whites being separate, laws, discriminating against you, all right? So between that time, there's 246 years, El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X said, rahimahullah, 100 million, according to his statistics, or his estimate, from some of the research he did. I'm just giving you this figure. This is what he said. 100 million. of black Africans was extracted from Africa during that period of time, brought to the Western Hemisphere. America, England, France, Europe. Okay? 100 million. And he said at the end of slavery, in 1865, there was only 25 million. Think about that. 100 million, but at the end of slavery, just 25 million in the whole Western Hemisphere. Because I think some of the statistics, some of the books I've read mention when slavery ended, all right, in America there was about 4 million. About 4 or 5 million of us, our ancestors, who left. So those are some of the figures. I'm not mentioning it, for debate. I'm just showing you again. So let's say, to be safe, there was actually tens of millions. So from 25 to 100 million, or tens of millions of us, and Allah knows best the exact number, okay? All right, were brought from there, okay? Were brought, all right, to the Western world, including America, by white Europeans, all right? The English, the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the people from Belgium, the Dutch, the Italians, the Germans, etc. Just so you be clear on who did what, okay? Most of the slaves came from Central and West Africa. Central and West Africa. We have a sister who had roots here with us, alhamdulillah, from, I think, Nigeria, right? SubhanAllah, West Africa, yeah, right there. They came from that area, man, our people, okay? All right. That's where they came from, all right? So most of them came from Central and West Africa, okay? There was what they called a slave triangle. From West Africa, they would take you to the Caribbean, and West Indies, and South America, and then from there you would be distributed. And I mentioned to you before that Malcolm, in some of his talks about our history, they would send us, before they bring it to America, they had to break us in, right? Mm-hmm. And he talked about the slave trader. Yeah. All right? And the slave master that made sure you was in check, you know what I'm saying? And then there was the slave maker. And the history books don't talk about the slave maker, because he was a cruel dude, okay? And Malcolm mentioned in his book on African American history, and how they tortured us and how they, take the woman and, and they hang up by her toes, she's pregnant, they cut the stomach open, the baby would fall on the ground, they would crush it with their feet. And while all the other slaves would watch it, so they put fear in the rest.
Visceral.
Yeah, so they wouldn't rebel. Mm-hmm. Keep everybody in check. That's what they would do, and how they would take a man and tie him to four trees that bend, palm trees, you see, and tie his arms and his legs and his, all 4 limbs to those trees. And they cut the rope, and the tree would split him in four different pieces. And they would do that in front of the rest of the slaves to break them in. Mm-hmm. So by the time they get here, they rebel. But in spite of that, they didn't do a good job, because alhamdulillah, Allah raised up who He want to raise. There's many rebellions in our history, all right? Mm-hmm. But again, lessons in black history. There's a lot of stuff, brothers, And so, to justify, here's how they justify slavery for so long. This is where racism come in. Racism, because again, they have a constitution. They made slavery legal. It was in their constitution. It's the law. It was the law. Mm-hmm. There was a philosophy behind this. You see? And how did they justify, again, to justify their racism and their greed, they used the Bible. Now, you don't know that, I'm going to tell you. There's a story in the Bible. All right? And so we don't believe anything from the Bible. The Bible is a scripture. So story from the Bible, Ham, the son of Noah, after the flood. Ham, Noah had 3 sons, Ham and Japheth and Shem.
Shem, Japheth, yeah.
Yeah, 3 sons. Let me make a long story short. The story in the Bible understands that Ham saw his father's nakedness. His father was asleep and he became uncovered and he saw his nakedness. And because of that, or he covered his father because he saw the father's shame. And to me, it don't make any sense, but this is a story. It's about white supremacy as the desired model and the culture of African American as the subhuman underclass. We stop there. So I wanted to show you that, man. Let me close out with this. Little is known, or little known story of Ota Benja. Ota Benja. Have anybody in here ever heard of that name? Ota Benja. Shahid. I spoke to him the other day about it. Ota Benja. Okay? And somebody told me they had a documentary on this issue, on TV.
Wow.
I don't know. I was surprised. Okay? But anyway, here's a picture of him in her book. African guy, African young man. He says, little is known because they don't teach this stuff in history, really. A 22-year-old Congolese man was placed in the Bronx Zoo and billed as the missing link. They had him like on display next to the cage of an ape. This is the missing link between humans. This human being from Africa. They had him on display. The missing link. In 1906, provides perhaps the most reprehensible example of dehumanization in recent history. Got that?
Yeah.
This took place in 1906. Now, slavery is supposed to be long been abolished, but people are still doing this stuff in the Bronx Zoo. This has some of this black and Shahid, stand up and let white folk come. Ooh, 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 ooh. Look at the human monkey.
Yes. Yeah. La ilaha illallah.
That is dehumanizing.
Yes.
And I'm saying to myself, 1906, but slavery ended in. Yeah, okay, people were still. It goes on. I was shocked when I read this that the Bronx Zoo continued to hold Ota Benja captive. In America? In America. Holding him as a captive despite his constant attempts to fight back, and in spite of public protests. So there was some I guess right now, I don't know what they were. We should have been outraged, man. You know what I'm saying? And tear that zoo down. Okay? Demanding that he be released. So he was literally a captive. Madison Grant was an attorney that lobbied to have Ota Benja placed on display alongside apes at the Bronx Zoo. And so he was a strong proponent of scientific racism, the whole idea of proving that blacks are inferior, blacks are less than human, so forth and so on. Yeah. Okay? Yeah, Madison Grant. I'll stop there. This is enough. Ultimately, someone, interceded and was able to get his release, and they moved into another part of the country, so forth and so on. But he killed himself later on. He killed himself. He took his own life, and that was the end of it, I guess, the trauma of all of that. You see what I'm saying? But just to give you one example, whatnot, the kind of racism stuff. So I just wanted to share that with you, inshallah. Now,
man, what's your take on us, majority of our ancestors being Native Americans?
That's all another. What do you mean Native American?
Being here already. Not majority of our ancestors come from Africa.
Maybe you're talking about the Native Indians. I mean, man, they've been oppressed too, man. I mean, that's a whole other issue.
No, I'm saying like the narrative has been changed that majority of our ancestors are from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Why not from here? Because it's a book that I got from Mansa Musa's brother Abu Bakr traveled here to the Americas, or not just land in America, South America.
So what?
You don't need boats to travel from South America. Yeah, you could we could travel. We could travel
Yeah.
this way.
By land.
So what is the point you're asking?
No, I'm just saying because it's a lot of that stuff coming out now. Like instead of us, the majority of our ancestors being from Africa, we was already here already.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably too. Inshallah.
I just want to know your take on this.
It's a whole nother issue. It's a whole nother issue in terms of the kind of